Staff at the Millennium restaurant were asked if they remembered seeing Madeleine on the Saturday night, when the McCanns and the group ate there on the first night, but all could only remember seeing the twins. And in any event, we have the photos of Madeleine playing happily in the playground, probably on the first evening, dressed in the same clothes she was wearing on the plane journey to Portugal. On the morning of Sunday the 29th, the McCanns say they ate breakfast at the Millennium restaurant. That seems to be convincing evidence that she was alive, happy, dressed in a pretty pink dress at lunchtime that Sunday, the first full day of the holiday. But after this point, things become very vague. There is very little information, either in the Portuguese files or in Kate McCann's book, for example, which gives us much information about Madeleine or what was going on for the rest of the week. Were there any independent, credible and verifiable sightings of Madeleine during this period? Were the McCanns seen out and about as a happy family of 5? Were the McCanns seen out and about as a family of only 4? The first point to note is that we have no confirmed photographs of the McCanns nor of any of their children after the Sunday that week. The last photo is probably from Sunday, and the tennis balls photo has so many queries about it that I do not think we can rely on that as any proof of Madeleine being alive after Sunday. Second, in over 8.5 years since Madeleine was reported missing, no member of staff, a local, anyone to my knowledge, has come forward to say that they had seen Madeleine and the McCanns, all 5 of them together on that holiday, or as a family of only 4 together. None of the statements made appear to give a definite indication of someone clearly having identified Madeleine as alive after Sunday. There was a strange change of plan by the McCanns regarding breakfasts and lunches. Despite breakfast being included in the price of their holiday, they decided from Monday onwards to eat breakfast in their own apartment. That is confirmed by all their Tapper 7 friends. Their stated reason was that it was too far to walk to the Millennium for breakfast. But was there a different reason? We are told in various places that all the Tapper 7 group would take all their children each day to the apartment occupied by the Paynes for a kind of buffet or sandwich lunch on their balcony. Yet the McCanns decided for the rest of the week after Sunday not to join their friends and to have their lunch in their own apartment, which was on the floor below that of the Paynes. No reason is given for this. But suppose something had happened to Madeleine by the Monday of that week. To stay in the apartment for lunch with just one parent bringing the twins home for lunch from the creche would avoid anyone seeing the 4 of them together and asking the obvious but awkward question, where is Madeleine? If the McCanns were to take only the twins to the Paynes' apartment, people would inevitably ask the question, where's Madeleine? We are told that on leaving their apartment during the week, one of the McCanns would leave via the back door of the apartment and the other parent by the front door. Why would they do this? Again, was it connected in some way with Madeleine being missing at this time? Is it possible that all of this apparent subterfuge was intended to disguise the fact that Madeleine was no longer with them? There was an echo of this in what we read earlier in Kate McCann's version of what happened on the evening of the 3rd of May, the night Madeleine is supposed to have disappeared, the week after Madeleine was reported missing, where he said, after 17:30 they went to the apartment. The deponent, Jerry McCann, having entered by the main door, which he did not lock while he was inside the residence, Kate and the children entered by the rear door, after this had been opened from the inside by the deponent. Why this strange routine? It looks as though this was their routine for the week after Sunday, so that the 2 parents would never be seen out with just the twins. So does this represent evidence that Madeleine was dead by Monday? Then we have some other very specific discrepancies to consider. On the Thursday of that week, the McCann's friends all seem to have got together and taken their children down for the afternoon to the beach. There is a photograph of them all together at a beach restaurant between 5 p.m. and 6 p.m, taken by Fiona at the Paraiso restaurant, which compares with the ones from the Paraiso CCTV that we looked at earlier. But the McCanns say they put Madeleine in the creche that afternoon. There is no clear explanation as to why the McCanns and Madeleine didn't join their friends at the beach. Instead, the McCanns decided to play tennis. As part of the tale Kate McCann told about this late afternoon, she claims that on picking up Madeleine from her creche, she made a point of relating that she asked Madeleine on collecting her if she was upset about not going to the beach with the rest of the group. If Kate's story is true, surely when taking Madeleine to the creche that afternoon, she would already have known that all their Tapper 7 friends were going to the beach, and could have said to Madeleine at the time, Ella won't be in your group this afternoon, but you'll be able to play with her at tea time. It is possibly another example of a self-serving statement of no evidential value, designed to bolster a false account of that afternoon's events. Statements about a supposed high tea that afternoon were so contradictory that it seems unlikely that that event ever happened. A further query relates to the afternoon of Tuesday the 1st of May. The McCanns hired a buggy that afternoon and took the children to the beach, returning them to the creche for the last hour of the afternoon session. Yet, the creche records for that day clearly show that the children were put promptly back into the creche after lunch at 2:30 p.m. and collected at 5:30 p.m. Either Kate McCann's story is wrong, or the creche records are wrong, or both. Just one other point relating to hiring the buggy. as Kate McCann claims in a TV interview given by Jerry McCann in 2008. He attempted to explain how the McCanns almost didn't leave the children on their own on that Thursday evening, but nearly took them to the Millennium restaurant. So how was it they could hire a buggy on Tuesday, but not Thursday? That's one more thing that simply doesn't add up about the events that week. Any reliable evidence that Madeleine was still alive on Thursday the 3rd of May, and saw that there didn't appear to be. So do we have any reported sightings of Madeleine by other people from the Sunday through to the Thursday? Kat Baker, Madeleine's nanny. A tapas restaurant cook who claimed to have seen Madeleine. A claimed sighting of Madeleine at a tennis lesson by journalist and former Crime Watch reporter Bridget O'Donnell. And a family who claimed their children were playing with the McCanns and their children on the Wednesday afternoon. What does Kat Baker say about Madeleine that week? She is asked by the police and says, most of the time in which I saw the family together, the children would be eating. The twins appeared tired at lunch after a long day, and also perhaps due to the heat, but I never took much notice of the McCanns' behaviour that week. That is the clearest possible contradiction with the McCanns' equally clear statements that they were taking breakfast and lunch in their own rooms and not going to any of the Ocean Club eating places at lunchtime. If the McCanns were telling the truth about having their meals in their room, it means Kat Baker wasn't with them when they were having breakfast and lunch. The McCanns were eating in their own apartment. So has Kat Baker made this up in order to try to convince the police that Madeleine was alive that week? Kat Baker seemed to have been on very friendly terms with the McCanns, and is therefore not an independent witness. Let's look at the statement by the tapas restaurant cook, Maria Manuela Antonia Jose. She made a statement to the police on the 6th of May. Here is an extract from her statement. When she was informed about the disappearance, she did not realise which child this was. It was only later, upon watching the television news that night, and after seeing pictures of the missing child on television, that she realised who the girl was, referring to her as Madeleine, the name used by the journalists, remembering only at that moment that she had seen her during the meals provided to the children at the creche, and which take place at the restaurant where she worked, and during arrivals at the creche where Madeleine spent the day, located immediately next to the restaurant. However, Madeleine was enrolled that week in Kat Baker's Lobster Club creche for 3 to 5-year-olds, which was located on the first floor of the main reception. That was not near the restaurant where Maria Jose worked. Moreover, she talks of meals provided to the children at the creche, but children didn't have meals at the creche. They didn't have breakfast there, and they all went back with their parents at lunchtime. It's not certain by any means that the children all had high teas every day. Further, she gives no specific detail about Madeleine. Next, she claims to have recognised Madeleine from the pictures on TV. This creates a further problem for her evidence, and that's because the photo she saw on television that weekend would have been the so-called first photo. This was of a much younger Madeleine. David Payne's daughter Lily looked similar to Madeleine holiday. Perhaps for the tapas cook, this was a simple case of mistaken identity. Hers is a vague statement, giving no reliable or checkable details about any specific occasions. She worked in the restaurant and probably saw lots of children coming and going. It looks then as if this witness could be mistaken. She made claims about having seen Madeleine taking meals that week, when in fact the McCanns were having lunch with the twins in their apartment every day. Bridget O'Donnell, who was a journalist and writer. She used to work on BBC Crime Watch. She is the partner of filmmaker Jeremy or Jez Wilkins, who did much of the filming for the ITV documentary series My Big Fat Gypsy Wedding. She was asked to write a long article in the mainstream media in December 2007 because she was actually in Pride of Luz the same week as the McCanns. She titled her article, My 6 Months with Madeleine. This was a reference to her having been with the McCanns that week in Pride of Luz, and therefore she claims having lived with Madeleine for the 6 months since she went missing. But despite that extravagant title, and despite she and Jez having become friends with the McCanns that week, there is not one sentence in the whole long article referring to or describing Madeleine, nor does she describe any specific incident. The only thing that comes anywhere near it is this reference to Madeleine playing tennis on Thursday morning. Earlier that day, there had been tennis lessons for the children, with some of the parents watching proudly as their girls ran across the court chasing tennis balls. They took photos. Madeleine must have been there, but I couldn't distinguish her from the others. They all looked the same, all blonde, all pink and pretty. The statement, Madeleine must have been there, is hardly convincing, especially with no other reference to her by Miss O'Donnell. So we cannot count that as credible evidence of having seen Madeleine any time that week either. To the Boyd family, who claimed that their little boy played with Madeleine for most of the Wednesday afternoon, the day before Madeleine was reported missing. Their story surfaced in a small circulation family periodical, First magazine, which appeared just 2 weeks after Madeleine was reported missing. The Boyd family was certainly in Pride of Luz that week. Indeed, it appears that they feature in the playground picture, which we noted was almost certainly taken on the first day of the holiday. Mr. Jason Boyd, then aged 39, is the man in the red shirt left of picture, with his wife Vicky, aged 34. Their son Louis was 3, and they also had a 10-month-old baby with them. A year later, the family featured in Rupert Murdoch's son, The article by local Portuguese journalist Daniel Gusmaroli began with this claim. The day before she disappeared, Maddie spent an idyllic afternoon playing in the sun with 3-year-old Louis Boyd. Louis's mum shares her story with First magazine. The article asked, will Maddie's mum ever recover? If we look at the detail of Mrs. Boyd's account, the feature writer tells us this. Louis Boyd couldn't believe that his new friend was so good at football. After all, she was only a girl. The 3-year-old was having great fun tearing around with the pal he had met that afternoon. Her name, Madeleine McCann, and they were giggling as they fooled around by the pool as their parents looked on. Later in the article, Louis is said to have looked at the posters Madeleine featured in around Pride of Luz and asked his mother, Mummy, is this the girl I was playing with yesterday? His mother said, yes. Louis is said to have replied, why are her pictures everywhere? His mother said, because she's lost her mummy. And the article notes that Louis went quiet. Later the article goes on. Vicky was sitting by the pool as Maddie's mum Kate, 38, relaxed on a sun lounger and watched her children whizzing down the water slide. Maddie was wearing a sun hat, a little pink top and blue skirt, occasionally stopping to pull faces at her mum. As Kate looked on adoringly, Maddie went to the poolside to a play area to have a game of play football with Louis. She and Louis were kicking a football around for about an hour. The two of them were giggling and having fun. They got on really well together. I spoke to Maddie's mum Kate briefly. She told me this was their first holiday abroad with the kids and they were all having a lovely time. She felt the Portuguese were lovely people and very family-orientated. Madeleine's dad, Jerry, 38, was playing tennis on a nearby court at the time, and after the match he joined Kate and put his arm around her. They seemed like a really happy family, a good strong family unit. She is quoted as saying, when the posters went up on the Friday, Mrs. Boyd said, we recognised Maddie immediately. Well, it certainly makes good copy. Except, of course, that the photos of Madeleine that went up that week were of the so-called first photo that was anything up to 18 months out of date. The article also included half a page about Kate McCann's initial reaction to Madeleine disappearing. It states, Kate and Jerry telephoned local priest Father David Heal, asking him to visit them at their apartment. When he arrived with his wife, Kate threw herself into the priest's arms and she broke down. The article continues. It took him almost 3 hours to comfort Kate. Father Heal explains in the article how the McCanns asked him to pray for Madeleine's safe return. The priest added, we have been to see them several times when they are emotional and distraught. So in this lengthy article, we have what appears to be crystal clear, watertight evidence of Madeleine being alive and playing happily on the day before she disappeared. It sounds like it was most of the afternoon. Madeleine playing around the pool, then playing football for an hour, then returning to be with Mummy and Daddy by the pool. But there are two very big problems with this story, and several others besides. First, the creche records for that afternoon. Let's have a look. They clearly tell us that Madeleine was shown as being in the Lobster Group creche with her nanny Kat Baker all afternoon from 2:45 p.m. to 5:30 p.m. So there's a conflict of evidence. Was she playing football with Louis or in the creche all afternoon with Kat Baker? It can't have been both. But there's another possible way of checking what happened that afternoon, and that's to look at what Kate McCann says about that afternoon in her book Madeleine. We find it on page 60, Wednesday the 2nd of May, 2007. Our last completely happy day. Our last to date as a family of 5. If only it was possible to rewind, even for an hour. Today it rained. The children went to their clubs, but our tennis lessons were postponed. Instead we joined Fiona, David and Diane at the Millennium Restaurant for coffee. We then returned to our apartment, and a little while later I left again to go for a run with Matt. I'd bought a new pair of running shoes a few days before we'd left for Portugal, and they were certainly getting a good initiation. They were pink, which I wasn't quite sure about. I wondered how seriously a runner in pink trainers could be taken, but after a few outings in the sand, they weren't looking quite so glaringly girly. As we ran along the promenade, a small dog jumped out from under a bench and attacked my right calf. It was pretty sore, and I was a bit shaken, but I carried on as coolly as I could manage. Maybe he just didn't like those pink trainers. Jerry and I picked up the children, had lunch in the apartment, and then took them to the play area for an hour before walking them to their clubs. The tennis group lessons were rescheduled for the afternoon, Jerry's group first, followed by mine. After that, it was the usual routine. Tea with the children, playtime, bath time, milk, stories, kids' bedtime, get ready. So, no mention of any sun, only a mention of rain. And certainly no mention of Madeleine happily playing football with little Louis for an hour, or whooshing down the water slide. So what can we make of this? Was it fabricated by the Boyds? Were they roped in by the McCann team to concoct this story? Did the publishers of First magazine check their story out with the McCanns? Whichever it was, no way can we take this as any proof that Madeleine was alive on Wednesday the 2nd of May. A British expat living and working in Canada, Lizzie Taylor, known on the internet as Heidi-Ho, has compiled a very useful analysis of all the other claimed sightings of Madeleine that week, based on extensive analysis of all the relevant witness statements. Like everyone else, I once believed that Madeleine was seen during the holidays, as there were so many people that claimed to have seen her. As I started to collate the witness statements and scrutinise each one, I realised that apart from Fatima de Silva, who saw Madeleine and the family outside the apartment one day, there was not one statement that had a similar degree of credibility. I thought that the possibility of something happening to Madeleine prior to Thursday would be impossible, but after reading all the statements, every one, except Fatima, allows for doubt. Some were very obviously mistaken. She then goes on to list other witness statements. Here is Lizzie Taylor's list and her comments. Cecilia Diaz-Firmino, receptionist at Millennium, described a shy Madeleine and saw them on days they were not at restaurant. Therefore, not proof that she saw Madeleine. She may have seen one of the other tapas children. Geronimo Salcedes, tapas barman, admits to not being able to recognise if it was Madeleine. Luisa Ana de Norna de Azevedo Coutinho, receptionist, claims to have seen Madeleine with the McCann's friend Dr. Russell O'Brien, but his daughter was not in the creche that morning and looks very similar to Madeleine, so likely mistaken. Georgina Jackson, tennis instructor, was non-specific about seeing Madeleine, only that she was part of the group for that morning. Charlotte Pennington, creche nanny. We've already covered Charlotte Pennington earlier in the film. Diaz Romao claimed seeing Madeleine at times she was not there, according to the creche record. Emma Wilding did not know Madeleine well and makes incorrect statement about seeing Jerry. Paula Cristina de Costa Vieira, cleaner, says she saw Madeleine McCann twice leaving the Millennium at about 9:30 to 10 a.m, but they didn't go to the Millennium for breakfast. Non-specific comments that do not confirm Madeleine's presence were made by Jez Wilkins, Stephen Carpenter and Daniel Stuck. So what about that one statement that Lizzie Taylor thinks may be credible, one by Fatima Maria Serafim de Silva Espada, the daughter of one of the cleaners? She says that she saw the McCanns and their 3 children. Let's look at the relevant extract from her statement, and let's note that this particular alleged sighting took place on the Sunday, and see what a tremendous amount of specific detail she gives to the police as she unfolds what she saw. She states that this took place on Sunday the 29th of April, just before she finished her morning shift at 13:30, as she had the afternoon off that day. At about 13:15 she went to help her mother, who was cleaning apartment 5I of the same block, situated on the first floor. She clearly remembers seeing the girl, accompanied by her siblings and mother, leave their apartment 5A and walk to the stairs leading to the floor above. She was very close to them, at a distance of about 1 metre, observing their movements for a few moments, because she was charmed by them. Madeleine led the way with a plate, perhaps plastic, in her hand, bearing a piece of bread. As regards the clothes she was wearing, she only remembers a skirt, but cannot recall its description. She noted, because she thought them nice, the type of shoes she was wearing. Tennis shoes, light in colour, she thinks, which had little lights along the soles, which lit up each time she stepped on the ground. Her siblings followed behind her, wearing the same kind of shoes, and each holding a piece of bread in their hands. Their mother followed behind them without holding their hands. She seemed to remember the mother was also carrying a plate. Moments afterwards, perhaps the time it took to close the apartment door, the father came out and also headed to the apartment upstairs. When asked, she does not remember whether the father pulled the door closed or locked it with a key. So here we have a statement which I suggest clearly is credible. It is not vague, it does not look contrived. Moreover, she sees all 5 members of the family together, and after that no one ever sees all 3 children together that week. What about her shoes? Unfortunately, we do not see these in the last photo, so we don't know if they are the same ones as this cleaner describes. However, we do have the photos taken what I think was the day before, and on this one, the playground picture, we can see that Madeleine is indeed wearing exactly the same shoes as described by the cleaner. In the last photo, Madeleine is wearing a pink dress. The cleaner remembers Madeleine wearing a skirt, she thinks, but can't remember what colour it was. It's easy to confuse a dress with a skirt. This incident happens at about 1:15 p.m. on the Sunday. Is it possible that Madeleine was already in the clothes in which she is seen in the last photo? I think it is. So, in the statement of Luisa Ana Coutinho, we have a detailed, wholly credible statement that is also fully consistent with the last photo having been taken about an hour later by the pool, after lunch on the Sunday. The clarity and detail of this witness statement shows up the other statements from the Ocean Club staff for what they are, vague statements with no detail and therefore lacking credibility. It means that the creche records, which show Madeleine as being in the creche for several hours each day, from Sunday through to the Thursday, cannot be correct. If we look closely at the records, we see that Madeleine is being signed into the creche after some children, but before others. The arrival and leaving times are all sequential, and there are clearly a number of different parents' signatures on the sheets, many of whom would not know the McCanns. So, if these records were forged, it means they were most likely forged at the times the creches were being held. In other words, Madeleine's name entered onto the sheet at the time stated, but just with her not being present. We see that on most occasions, Madeleine is signed into and out of the Ocean Club reception creche nearly always exactly 5 minutes after Sean and Amelie are signed into and out of their creche at the Tapas area. So we can assume from this that the McCanns dropped the twins off at the Tapas creche, then walked Madeleine along to the Ocean Club reception creche, thus Madeleine being signed in 5 minutes after the twins. But wouldn't you have thought that when collecting the 3 children, that Madeleine would always be collected first, then the twins 5 minutes later? The children were always dropped off or collected by just one parent. So when collecting the 3 children, if the twins are collected first, it means the parent would have to walk with 2 two-year-old children all the way to the other creche, collect Madeleine, then walk all the way back to the apartment. Wouldn't you think they would collect Madeleine first to save trekking the twins to the other creche and back? And I don't think it's possible that they took the twins back to the apartment first, because there wasn't enough time to do that within just 5 minutes, that the McCanns probably were putting their twins into the Tapas creche and collecting them from the Tapas creche, that as soon as they were dropped off or collected, one of the McCanns, Kate or Jerry, would walk to the Ocean Club creche to sign Madeleine in or out, even though she wasn't there. This would explain why Madeleine is nearly always signed in and out 5 minutes after the twins. If this is indeed the case, it means that it would have been much easier to carry this off if the nanny in charge, i.e. Kat Baker, was helping them to sign a child in and out that was not present. And we know that Kat Baker has always remained close to the McCanns and visited them at key times at their home in the UK. There was an interesting interview about Kat Baker given by her Nani Cavallo in TV Mais on the 18th of November 2008. Some have doubts about the Ocean Club's creche records. The doubts increase if we pay attention to the depositions of Maddie's last nanny, Kat Baker. The statements that the nanny gave to the police raised doubts. When re-questioned in England, she corrected several statements that she had given in Portugal. She was allowed to refresh her memory from her previous statements. Kat Baker says she remembers extraordinary details about the day Madeleine was reported missing, but says she doesn't remember who picked up Maddie and at what time. The Portuguese police called in calligraphy experts. These experts found discrepancies in the handwritings. Just one of the doubts that the analysts raise concerns the identity of those doing the form filling and their signatures in the form. The nanny's signature and her handwriting appear on the sheet where only the parents were supposed to sign. Did no one notice this? One more curiosity about Kate McCann's purported signatures in the creche records is this statement in her book, Madeleine, about the fact that ever since she had got married, she had always used her maiden name. On the 4th of May 2007, the date after Madeleine was reported missing, I became Kate McCann. According to my passport, driving licence and bank account, I was Kate Healy. I hadn't kept my maiden name for any particular reason. It was just who I was and who I'd always been. But when Madeleine was taken, the press automatically referred to me as Kate McCann, and Kate McCann I have been ever since. Overnight, our old life had gone, and I'd become a different person. If that really is the case, then we must ask why her signature in the creche records on every day except one was K. McCann and not K. Healy. These creche records are so unreliable and contradictory, so much so that the suspicion of deliberate forgery arises, so they cannot be used as any kind of conclusive evidence that Madeleine really was in that creche. I've mentioned the possibility that some witnesses may well have confused Madeleine with another child. There was indeed one child on that holiday, a child of one of the McCann's Tapas 7 friends who was also, like Madeleine, 3 years old, and who looked very similar to Madeleine. And that was Ella, the daughter of Dr. Russell O'Brien. Ellie was also on Madeleine's lobster creche group. Here is a most curious incident. This is the statement of one of the receptionists at the Ocean Club, Louis Anacatino. She gave evidence of one of the Tapas 7 group visiting the Ocean Club reception area on the evening of Sunday the 29th of April, and making an unusual demand for a block booking of the tapas bar for the McCanns and their group, so that they would be guaranteed a place there every evening. There are many inexplicable and contradictory features about this request, but for now, let's look very closely at what the receptionist says in her statement. She has been a receptionist at the garden for 1 year, but has worked there previously. The Ocean Club Garden reception has less functions than the main reception and deals with subjects relating to activities, the pool, tennis, etc. and excursions. She points out that the family in question came via Mark Warner, and this company takes care of all relations with clients, and there is practically no contact between the clients and reception. She adds that this family, McCann, like all Mark Warner clients, have half board, that is breakfast and dinner. For dinner, the guests could choose between two restaurants, the Tapas and the Millennium. She says that the guests told her that the Tapas was of better quality, but it was difficult to reserve there as a Mark Warner guest, as the Mark Warner daily quota was of only 20. In this concrete case, the reasonable option was the Tapas, as the distance was only 40 metres from the accommodation, as opposed to 200 metres from the Millennium. She remembers that on Sunday the 29th of April, one of the individuals of the group arrived with the child Madeleine McCann. She does not know his name and can only say that he was male and tall and thin, and that he approached her to request a booking for the whole group for the whole week and always at 20:30. When questioned, she confirms that the man was not the father of the girl, but one of the members of the group whom was often seen in his company. The man justified his request by saying that the group had many small children whom they would leave alone when they went to dine. She said that at intervals, some two parents would go to the apartments to see if everything was okay. The deponent made some comments about the request, saying that the Tapas received many requests and that Mark Warner only had a quota of 20 per day, but upon the insistence of the guest, she managed to make the bookings requested. She confirms that it was possible to see the apartment from the restaurant, including the window of the sitting room. She does not know in which bedroom the children were sleeping, but upon being informed that it was on the opposite side of the apartment, she confirmed that it would be completely out of sight from anyone at the restaurant, that the most viable solution would be to leave the children with a babysitter, which is the procedure normally adopted by clients. Regarding the question as to the availability of the babysitting service between 19:30 and 23:30, she confirms that the service exists and that it is free of charge. When questioned, she says that she does not understand, as the service is free, why the parents of Madeleine McCann did not use it. When asked, she says that the contact with this family was normal, like with other clients, and describes them as nice. With regard to the date of the disappearance, she says that she worked from 9 o'clock till 1700 hours and only returned at 8 a.m. on the 4th of May. It was on this day at 08:30 when she arrived that she was informed about the disappearance by colleagues. She only knows what third parties have told her and from what she has seen in the press. She never saw anything strange. During this interview, she provided a book with the reservations for the Tapas restaurant. Now, there is only one of the Tapas group of doctors who fits the description of being tall and thin, and that's Dr. Russell O'Brien, father of Ella. The likelihood is that it was him who spoke to Miss Louisa Anna Coutinho, but the receptionist says that it was Madeleine McCann with him. Is it not much more likely that this girl with him was his own daughter, Ella? By all accounts, she looked very similar to Madeleine. Could it be that the receptionist and maybe several other staff all mistook Ella for Madeleine? That Ella was there for the rest of that week, but that Madeleine was not, at the fabled last photo. The high probability that this photo was taken not on Thursday the 3rd of May as claimed by the McCanns, but 4 days earlier on the Sunday lunchtime that week. Credible evidence that Madeleine McCann was alive after then is wholly lacking. If Madeleine died, say, late on Sunday, that explains why no DNA of Madeleine was found in the McCann's apartment. If Madeleine McCann died, say, late on Sunday, that explains why there are no photographs of Madeleine that week, apart from 5 taken on the day of arrival and the last photo. If Madeleine died, say, late on Sunday, that might well explain why the tennis balls photo might be a forgery. It was supposed to have been taken on either the Tuesday or the Thursday, but that's impossible if something had already happened to Madeleine. If Madeleine died, say, late on Sunday, then the McCann group would have had time to plan the elaborate abduction hoax. If Madeleine died, say, late on Sunday, that could help to explain why certain people in Praia de Luz the very next day contacted Robert Murat, who was then staying with relatives in Devon, England, and summoned him back to Praia de Luz, where his mother, Jennifer Murat, had been living for many years. Murat immediately booked a flight and rushed back from England, taking the 1,500-mile flight to Praia de Luz on the very next morning, Tuesday, leaving home at 5 a.m. Perhaps an abduction hoax needed time to be planned. The international media frenzy that erupted on the morning of the 4th of May quite probably also had to be planned. From Tanya Cardigan, one of the leading statement analysts in the country, and who works closely with internationally known pioneer of statement analysis, Peter Hyatt. She has made a special study of the McCann case, focusing on the McCann's strange use of language, which she says provides valuable clues as to what really happened to Madeleine. She has written, "What I believe may have happened to Madeleine McCann. I believe that Madeleine died before Thursday the 3rd of May. That the odour of a corpse was found behind the sofa means she must have lain there for at least 90 minutes, since that is how long, depending on the manner of death and the environmental conditions, the odour takes to develop sufficiently for a dog to detect it once the body has been removed. This would blow away the McCann's claims of 30-minute checks, since they clearly didn't notice her missing for at least 90 minutes. There is also the fact that the apartment was almost certainly forensically cleaned. There was no DNA to show that Madeleine was even there. Forensics look for what is there that shouldn't be, and just as importantly, what isn't there that should be. This tells me that time had to be taken to clean the apartment, something not possible in the time frames given for Thursday the 3rd of May. This tells me Maddie died sometime earlier in the week. Looking at the statements and how much is written concerning each day of the trip, I and others have noticed there seems to be a lot missing from the Monday of that week. We go from quite detailed statements about what happened before Monday to obfuscation and lots of I can't remembers. This makes that day sensitive, requiring further information as to why the sensitivity. If she died much earlier in the week, then that leaves plenty of time for the clean-up, washing clothes and hiding of the body. Why did the McCanns act the way they did? Innocent parents act a specific and expected way. Guilty parents also act a specific and expected way. The two are mutually exclusive. Innocent parents, had there been an accident, would have called 999, even if she was long dead. Parents act in denial and will always hope for a miracle. But the fact that they didn't call 999 means that there was something they could not explain away as accidental. This could be current injuries, old and healing injuries, evidence of sedation, or signs of abuse. If Madeleine died, say, within 24 hours of the time the last photo was taken on Sunday, as I suggest, so much about this strange case can be explained. The cadaver dogs of Martin Grime proved that someone had died in the McCann's apartment. Gonçalo Amaral, the Portuguese investigation coordinator, thought it may have been an accident, falling off a sofa maybe. According to some, there is a certain amount of circumstantial evidence that an overdose of sedative drugs might have caused or contributed towards Madeleine's death. Another possibility is that someone, not necessarily one of the McCanns, might have assaulted her and killed her.